As we know, Islam is the biggest blessing in our life. It's the biggest ni'mah in our life. And a lot of times it's a ni'mah, it's a blessing that we take for granted. We overlook it. And sometimes we don't value it. So hearing about the struggle of someone who traveled, for example, like some of the Sahaba, Salman al-Farisi, traveled around the world in search for the truth. Or in our day and time, some of the struggles that new Muslims have, it reminds us of that great blessing. It puts everything into perspective. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to bless you all, to bless our speaker, to increase him in knowledge and guidance and wisdom. And may Allah Azza wa Jalla reward him for coming out and taking the time out to share the story. Without any further ado, inshallah, I'll pass the mic on to Brother Ali. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, first of all, for having me. Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. So we begin in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the granter of mercy. All praise and all glory belong to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, and certainly Allah is deserving of the best thanks and the most beautiful praises. And we testify that no one is worthy of our worship, our devotion, our love, and our obedience except Allah alone, the true Supreme King. And we testify that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in truth and without doubt his prophet, his servant, his messenger, and he was sent as a mercy to the worlds. And so, to proceed, today's talk is kind of about my story personally and the experiences that I've had. It's kind of meant to be a reminder, as Sheikh said, of the ups and downs that we all can relate to, not just converts and new Muslims and things like that, but it's a journey, the ups, the downs, the lefts, the rights, from the darkness of disbelief to the light of Islam. And so I plan to give you kind of the dirty secrets that come along with it, the lows, the highs, and the amazing journey that it is for people who accept Islam and kind of stick with it, and the things they experience. So the flyer said 30 years, but it's about 27 years. I accepted Islam when I was 16 years old, when I was in high school. And so I'm not the youngest convert that I know. I've met a young man who was here in Sacramento. He came to the masjid with his father at 14 years old, mashallah. And he accepted Islam with his father, who wasn't Muslim. His father, brought him in order to take his shahada. So there are those who come very young to the masajid. So, basically, my background, I was raised Christian. The standard Western definition of Christian. Meaning, and this was mainly by my mom. My mother, she raised me, quote, "You're a Christian, we're Christian, and we're going to go to Sunday school." My father, he had a totally different, he was indifferent to religion, more leaning the negative view of religion. It's a way people are manipulated and controlled is kind of his approach and attitude towards it. And later I'll try and explain maybe where that came from. So I went to Sunday school because I was a, quote, Christian until I was about 10 years old. And then I got old enough to, I didn't really like it. And so we just stopped going. It wasn't a big deal because we were Christian in name, basically alone. And so one point to note is this is not any different for Muslims as it is anyone else. If your family, if you as the parent, if your family is not living it, your children are not just, Sunday school will not save them. Sunday school was just something to do for me on Sundays until I got old enough so that I didn't want to do it. So keep that in mind. That's just a small kind of bit of advice. So around 16 years old, I had kind of the basic questions of life. Where did we come from? What am I supposed to be doing? And what's going to happen to me? Just these basic questions. This was just, the fitra was kind of peaking at that time for me, I guess you could say. And I don't want you to misunderstand that as, wow, this guy must have been like a really nice kid. And no, I was doing the same thing every other kid was doing in America, in my neighborhood. At the same time, I just had these questions, these feelings, the fitra is the only way I can describe it. It was there and it was prevalent and it was something I couldn't kind of overlook. And so, I decided, I'm going to read the Bible. I'm Christian after all, so let me read this Bible. And opened it up, page 1, Genesis. This is the first chapter of the Old Testament. I start reading, and each day I try and read a little bit. I'm not feeling it. It doesn't resonate with me. And man, let me skip ahead. Let me read some other part. And it just doesn't, I'm not drawn into it. So I have an uncle who's a Lutheran priest, and he wrote a book about his journey and how he became a Lutheran priest. He was actually out here in California and got himself into some trouble and ended up in San Quentin prison. You guys probably know this, right? You guys are from California, you know it better than me. So he went to jail, he came out, became a priest, wrote a book about his journey. So I said, let me, this kind of maybe relates a little better to me. The same thing, I'm reading it, I don't quite get his attachment to it. And so I decided I'm gonna look at all the religions that I know until I find the truth. So I'm looking around and I say, okay, let's go to school and we're gonna look at Buddhism. Why Buddhism? I like Kung Fu movies. It's that simple. And Kung Fu guys are Buddhists. That's my connection to it. It's simple. It's not anything deep. It's not anything reflective. I chose that first for that simple reason. I like Kung Fu movies. So I go and I go to something, maybe you young guys can get some history lessons, to something called a card catalog. Do any of you young guys know what a card catalog is? A card catalog is from ancient times before the internet and Google and computers. You went to the file cabinets and then there were little 3x5 note cards. And on there, it told you the location, the title, the chapter, all of this information, and you'd look things up by topics and stuff in this card catalog. You go find the book. So I do that in the Eastern religion section. So I look for something just on Buddhism. I have no idea what it's about. It just says Buddhism on the card. So I go, and the Eastern religion section, now I maybe forgot to mention, I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. This is like a small town about the size of Elk Grove now in the middle of Wisconsin. It's the capital. It has a nice university, and it's a nice place to grow up. But it's the Midwest. It's the middle of America. You don't have a lot of interaction with outside people in Madison unless you go to the campus. Then, you're going to have some international flavor. But for me, I was too young. I didn't get into, that part of the city or anything like that. So I go, our library, has one tall shelf and two shelves are the Eastern religions. So there's not much to choose from, but I see a book about Islam. And that's the one that catches my eye before I could find the Buddhism book. And so I knew two things about Islam: Saddam Hussein and the first Gulf War, and a street gang called the Vice Lords. It's like, what are you talking about, street gangs? So in prison, a lot of guys get mixed up with this and that, and Islam is kind of a big thing in prison for whatever reason. And I'd heard these guys talking about these prayers in a group called the Moorish Science Temple. Now this is an old group from like kind of almost pre-Nation of Islam days and stuff like that, but they had some things they would say. They would talk about these prayers that they would say that, mention Allah, and they would talk about the Quran, but that's it. It's a street gang. It's not very, official or anything like that. And it really has nothing to do with Islam, so don't make that mistake. But I had heard about it because these guys were close to Chicago, and these guys would come up into our, neighborhoods and stuff like that. So these are the two things I know about Islam. So I take the book and I'm looking at it. It has a lot of pictures. And under each picture, it has, a little caption. This is a picture about this. It has one, the seal, and it's kind of nice. And it's the Muslim Brotherhood. And it says, in Islam, Muslims consider themselves brothers, regardless of their, ethnic background. Worldwide, they're all considered, brothers. So, no, that's interesting. I flip through a few more pages. I see a thing that says, all Muslims worship God directly. They don't pray to a priest or a shrine or something like this. And I thought to myself, this is kind of good. Like, Buddhists have this gold statue that they worship, this, this big Buddha guy. And honestly, like in my head, my 16-year-old mind, I'm like, man, this guy's big. Like they could make him buff at least, do something, like spice it up a little, make him, whatever. And so I thought this is like a step up. You don't have an intermediary. You don't have something in front of you you're worshiping, an idol. And so I like that. And so I'm flipping through the book, and they talk about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so I'm like, oh, let's check this book out first. So we'll move Islam to the front of the line. And so I take it home and I look, and I don't actually read it. And years later, I went back and looked at the book, and it was actually very negative against Islam. I just checked the pictures. Alhamdulillah, the pictures gave me enough information to point me in the right direction. So I'm looking at the book. I said, I need to find this Quran that they keep talking about and, read it for myself. Let's give it the litmus test for yourself. So I go downtown to the campus area. I go to 3 bookstores, and I strike out 3 times. The third one was my closest. They said, we have one that's on the shelf back there, but they have a book club going on right now, so I can't interrupt it to get it for you. And so alhamdulillah, that sent me on another direction to go to. You guys ever seen one of these, a phone book? And I had to manually look. Without Google, it was a struggle. And alhamdulillah, there was one masjid on the campus. And so I went to the masjid, I called the masjid, and turns out I learned this, afterwards. There's just a phone in the hallway. It's not a desk. It's not, mashallah, a nice organized masjid like you guys have. And a brother picks up the phone, and I said, I'm nervous. I'm interested to come and talk to someone about Islam. I don't know anything about it. Okay, that's good. Come on Friday, 1 o'clock. It's Jummah time. I have no idea. He just says, come on Friday, and he said, somebody will talk to you. So I'm assuming it's him. So I wait. I go on Friday. I get out. I walk, and I'm looking at the masjid, and everyone is coming out. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I've never seen people from this many places in one location. And so I kind of walk up, and I hear all these, the languages. Alhamdulillah, we're a blessed community that we have people from around the world here in the States. You guys from back home, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody speaks the same language. You don't experience the cultural diversity like you do here in the States. So I'm nervous. I'm freaking out a little bit. And I'm looking. I'm looking for a guy, something official. Somebody in like a priest. He has to have some kind of uniform on. He has to be somebody. I don't see anybody. I'm too scared to say anything. And so I just left. I said, all right, this is too much. I don't even know who I should talk to. So I call the phone back. Coincidentally, the same guy's in the hallway, I guess. He answers, and he says, yeah, are you the guy I talked to last week? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, didn't you come Friday? I said, yeah, but I didn't find anybody. He said, okay, well, come on Friday again. I don't want to come on Friday. I'm nervous to come back. I said, can I talk to you beforehand? No, just come on Friday. Thanks. And that's the end of it. So I'm like, okay, I got to suck it up. I got to deal with this and come on Friday. So I go back next Friday, and I'm determined now. I want this Quran. And so, alhamdulillah, I walk up, and now there's 2 guys standing at the door, and they're just handing out a flyer. I said, these guys are official. They're handing out papers. They have to be official. Well, it turns out these are just 2, mashallah, very good brothers in the masjid, just doing some dawah, handing out some, reminders. So I go and I talk to them, and I say, hey, I'm new. I don't know anything about this religion, and I just want to talk to you guys, ask you some questions. And so they say, sure, come on in. And we go, the masjid had 2 floors, and so they take me up to the 2nd floor where it's quiet. And I just asked them, what is Islam? I'm like, I read this book, and it told me a couple things, and I thought I was there for about 15, 20 minutes. By the time we're done talking, by the time I realized it's 2 hours have gone by, and I have someone waiting for me to give me a ride back home. So I get super nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go, I'm sorry, And they're like, here, take our phone numbers. And so we exchange phone numbers on paper. And I go rushing back to my ride. I forget to ask about the Quran, but I leave with a really positive feeling. I can't tell you the details of the conversation. I can't tell you anything that we really discussed besides very basic things. but I had a very positive and a very good feeling when I left. And this is something that we have to keep in mind when people come from outside our masjid. They're not going to remember if you had the irrefutable, perfect answer to every question and you had 50 pamphlets and they're full color and glossy paper and it's amazing. The feeling that they leave with is what they leave with. You could give them a stack of materials this big, they're most likely never going to touch it. They're never going to look at it. But the feeling that they leave with is the most important thing. Were you generous with them? Were you kind with them? Were you open to answer questions that maybe made you uncomfortable? And so this would be a piece of advice to keep in mind. So I called them later on and they're like, yeah, come on over, come to our house. You know, we're students. We're 4 guys, we're roommates in this apartment, and we can talk all you want. They said, we have a brother who's older than us, he knows a little bit more than us. So we go and we meet, and again, I don't remember the gist of the conversation. I just remember the positive and really kind and friendly way they behaved with me. You know, we sat on the floor, and I remember they had furniture, you know, couches and things like this, but they were sitting on the floor, so I sat on the floor. And I was sitting on my legs, on my knees. And time goes by, and they're kind of looking, waiting for me to move. And I'm just kind of focused on what we're talking about, so I don't move until they say, you know, you should stand up. And I haven't realized my legs are completely asleep. I can't even stand up because we've been talking for so long. So things like this are what I remember from that. They recognize my awkwardness and were polite and, very easygoing about it. And they didn't want to make me feel uncomfortable. So we're talking, they're offering me food and things like this. This is a very new experience. Muslims are, mashallah, hospitable people. This is, alhamdulillah, one of the things we've held on to very tightly is that we're generous with guests and we're kind and easygoing with guests. And I'm really amazed because, like I said, I'm 16 years old. These guys are, graduate students, master's, PhD level students, and, 10 years older than me minimum, maybe even 15, a couple of them. And so we're talking, and I have this hesitation. My father's side comes in that, I'm waiting for something weird to be said because I'm like, this is too easy. Believing in one God, believing in a prophet, believing in the hereafter. I'm getting answers that are simple and easy to understand. And for a person coming from a Christian background, one, you're trying to wrap your mind around Trinity, which makes, you know what that is. You can't wrap your mind around something like that. And from a background where certain questions are not supposed to be answered. Supposed to be asked, let alone people having, answers for them. So to be very, frank with someone about religion and get very frank answers back, this is refreshing. This is, a very positive and inspiring thing for me. And so I say, okay, now it's time. They're not giving me anything weird. They're not giving me an excuse to leave, so I have to find the excuse. So I ask, did aliens build the pyramids? And these guys looked at me like, man, we messed up letting this guy into our house. We should have kept him outside. They were dumbfounded, are you serious? Of all the things you're asking, now you get to this? Because I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get the weird answer. Yeah, aliens built the pyramids, and thank you, I can leave now and move on to, the next religion. And so, no, the children of Israel built the pyramids. This was something, built by Pharaoh, giving me another reasonable answer. And so I'm like, okay, well, that didn't work. Another unusual question. That I get a reasonable answer back. Until, a few hours go by, and they basically did something that a lot of us, when we're talking to non-Muslims, are frankly shy to do. Anybody here do sales? Professional sales? A, B, C, always be closing, right? They close the deal. Do you like what you hear? I said, yeah. Does it make sense to you? Yeah, makes sense. Do you know how a person becomes a Muslim? No. Now I got him. I'm going to dance around the fire. I'm going to cut a chicken. What am I going to do? It's going to be weird, and now I can leave. Well, you believe in these things, and you do these things. They gave me the pillars of Iman and the pillars of Islam. And they say, if you believe these things, and you say these words, the Shahada, you're a Muslim. Would you like to become a Muslim? They closed the deal. I said, yes, I want to become a Muslim. And so I took my Shahada right there with them, and alhamdulillah, I'm here 27 years later, to give you guys a little bit of that story. So it was honestly emotional. I haven't thought about that story in detail like this for a long time, so I appreciate this opportunity to reminisce on that, but I don't want to drag it too long. So what's it like to be a new convert? A lot of people ask you that, like, oh, what's it like? You're coming here from this background that's totally different and this and that. And I tell people I have kind of like a story. It's like if you were lost in a forest and you're just walking, thorns, branches, they're catching your clothes, all of the things, you would have issues with walking through a forest. And you find a path finally. And this path, you see, it's going to lead you out of this forest finally. And when you get there, you see the ocean, you see the beach, and you see this expansive new world in front of you. You go to the water, and then you realize how deep the water is. And this is what it's like. It's like coming into a whole new world, a whole new experience, coming from, like I said, the darkness of disbelief to the light of Islam. So this is kind of how the feeling you get. Imagine being lost, being confused and not having answers. It's something that, it's hard to appreciate unless you've been in that situation, unless you've been kind of on the outside, one of those moments of low faith where your iman isn't quite what it was, and then you catch that lecture, you catch that verse that you read, and subhanAllah, it reawakens you, it recharges you. This is, that feeling. So what can the community do? I'll give you the answers of how the community can help new Muslims. And so it starts kind of with an organized effort. There has to be a group of people, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, so take it for what it's worth, who are familiar with English speakers, the YouTube pages, the books that are written by Muslims in the West for Western Muslims. You have to start there, because when I first came to the masjid, there wasn't a lot. You had Jamal Zarabozo, Sheikh Jamal, just getting started in his dawah. You had Yasser Qadi, still a student of knowledge overseas. Yasser Berjas wasn't here in the States yet. You have these people that are known now in here in the United States as like the pillars of dawah, but they weren't there. So for me, coming to Islam now, it would make sense that there's a group of people who are familiar with these things. Because everybody, they read the deen in their own language typically, right? You read Urdu, you read Urdu books. Or you speak Urdu, you read, in Urdu. Whatever. So having people familiar with those things and people who are willing to take you under their wing. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed to come into a masjid that was a small, very close-knit community. You're talking Jummah, 100, 125 people, maybe. That's a big Jummah for us. But the core group, the people who were there, you could go on a Friday and you find 30, 40 people out of that 100 in the masjid. So it was, a strong group there. And of that group, alhamdulillah, we had a lot of Saudi students. And I'm talking about Saudi students of back then. These guys were all PhD students. They got, their grant from the government to come here to finish their PhD. So these guys were all older, families, kids. They formed the bulk of the group. And the students who were over here at that time, mashallah, a lot of them had ijazah in hadith, ijazah in Quran. This is a different era. You go there now, you see a different type of people there now. But this group, mashallah, they were from, like you could say, the old ways. Their wives had ijazahs. Their wives had, a lot of recognition. or a lot of effort they put into the deen. And so the masjid had, you would say the average person in the masjid had quite a bit of knowledge. A lot of these guys from that older generation, from the Gulf region and stuff, they could come from their public school education and really have a job as an imam at that time in the West. Because, the deen was taken very seriously for that generation of people. And so they took me under the wing, and this was another thing that unfortunately we don't see a lot of new Muslims getting this treatment. I was a peer. I wasn't a new shiny toy. I wasn't something, to give a lot of hugs to and Assalamu alaikum, good luck, we hope we see you again soon. But I was kept as a peer and treated as such. And so this was something that is, one, the benefit of a small community, and two, it was a reflection of the character of those brothers. Is that a lot of people, and unfortunately, and this is kind of one of those dirty truths about the new people in the masjid, a lot of times, especially the African American converts, they don't get that treatment. And this is an ugly, ugly truth that we have to deal with. They get, oh brother, Bilal was the muadhin of the Prophet and he was black just like you. Okay, thank you. Like, we're not going to be friends with this. They look at this guy differently. And so this is unfortunately something we have to work on as a community. But this group that the masjid needs to kind of think about has to be willing to do that. And it's a very difficult emotional position to put yourself in, working with new Muslims. Because unfortunately, as we know, they come and they go. And it's a painful thing when a person that you become friends with, you build a bond with, because nothing builds bonds like learning the deen together. Nothing at all you'll ever do builds those kind of bonds. And then to see them kind of slip for whatever reason, they get pulled back away. It's a very difficult situation. And a lot of people don't want to put themselves in that situation. And so that's why they kind of shy away from the new guys. They shy away. And it's something that I think a group of dedicated people could help with. This is something, I think these people could do. And take them under their wing, like something similar to as I had mentioned. So Muslims go through a lot of phases. There's the new Muslim phase, and they come in and they're burning hot. You guys know what we're talking about. I'm going to learn Arabic this month. I'm going to memorize the Quran next month. Bukhari and Muslim the month after that. By 6 months from now, that's it. I'm going to know everything about the deen. And they come in and they're ready to just bite off everything. But the thing is no one can maintain that. And this is kind of one of those things where people burn hot and then they burn out. So having new Muslims in your masjid, you have to temper that. You have to slow them down. You have to help them pump the brakes and focus on things that are really going to be of benefit to them. One brother that I remember, so intent on just immersing himself. He's not going to wear Western clothes. He wants to wear like a shirt and pants. MashaAllah, Pakistani brother gives him an outfit. He's big. This guy's taller than me. He's thicker than me. He's a big boy. The sleeve is about to hear on him. The chest is ready to pop open because it's so tight. He wears it to the masjid every single time he comes to pray. He's so happy just to integrate and feel like I'm one of you guys. So this is how hot people burn. I mean, you come in and he looks ridiculous. He knows he looks ridiculous. But he wants it so bad. He wants to feel like a part of it so bad, he doesn't care. He's like, I have a long shirt on, it's better than wearing, my pants. That's his mindset. So this is how people come in, man. They're really burning hot. They go through this phase, and then they enter in, at the kind of the same time, the imitation phase. You don't really know anything. You're standing in the prayer. You don't know how to pray yet. You don't know what to say. So you're in this imitation phase. And this is crucial, because who you're imitating is going to play a big role on your development from that point forward. It's kind of like if you have a teacher. If your first teacher is really strong and really knows what they're doing, that foundation you build, it carries over from class to class to class. If your teacher's weak, you struggle. And maybe even you get pointed in the wrong direction. And this is, this initial phase, and this group of Muslims that can kind of look over them. That's something they can do. They can help them navigate that initial phase, that imitation phase. Then they start to understand things. They start to get a few books. They start to kind of understand a little more detail. And then eventually, inshallah, they integrate into the community. They're regular, they're learning things. But along the lines, in my experience, myself and almost everyone I know, there's the first big challenge. Something seems to happen. Shaitan, subhanAllah, you're like his favorite target now because you're a new Muslim. You've gone 180 degrees from the way he had you going, and now you got a big target on your back. And so something happens financially, family, personally, something happens. And a lot of times, this is another moment where these new people, they start to drift because they didn't get the help that they needed at that moment. For whatever reason it was, like I said, everybody has a different moment, but it always seems to be there's a big moment that they need help with. So then there comes personal change. Accepting Islam does not heal the trauma of your past. You don't suddenly get a pass from maybe somebody you had a problem with in the past. They don't care that you changed. They don't care. They don't see it. You had family issues with your uncle. He doesn't care. Your parents, you had issues with it. That's still there. That still exists. Your sins are wiped clean, but life is still there. And so that trauma is something that people often have difficulty with, because one of the first things new Muslims jump into is they want to tell everyone. They're so excited, and it may not be in their best interest to tell everyone, I accepted Islam last night, I'm a Muslim now. Because immediately, why did you do that? What is Islam? A lot of times new Muslims have a very hard time even answering basic questions because they know why they accepted Islam. And something touched them, but yet you ask them, why did you do something like this? Why are you, with these ISIS guys now? They don't know how to respond. And so maybe keeping it to immediate family, things like that, is the best advice you could give new Muslims. Don't let them, like I said, burn so hot. They're ready to take on the world and they're going to tell everybody how great Islam is. The only drawback, they really don't know. They really don't have the answers to a lot of just basic questions. So that's something too to keep in mind. So another thing that new Muslims go through is you don't suddenly dislike bacon and gambling and beer. It's not like a switch comes off. And some people struggle with this because they say, man, I know I shouldn't be doing such and such thing, but I like it still. The switch didn't flip when they said the Shahada. And so that's something to work on. It can be very embarrassing for them. It could be something very easy, like, man, I love pork chops. I love them. I can't stop eating them. What do I do, brother? This is a real thing that you can experience with a new Muslim, and you have to be ready to, help them with. So that's something, you can keep in mind. And another thing for new Muslims too is the old friends knew you. You haven't really made a lot of new friends. You haven't entered into the community fully. And you still have the same people calling you. Hey, bro, remember when we went out to that concert? That same guy's coming back next weekend. Let's go. And there's that tug now. The masjid, I call it like 1 foot on the street, 1 foot in the masjid. And it's like back and forth, back and forth. And sometimes it's very difficult for people to cut that off, to get both feet in the masjid. And so that's something that this group of people have to be willing to do is, hey, you have to be there socially for this guy. Let's go have coffee. Let's go have dinner. You can't just say, I'll see you at Isha time. And the brother's on his own. The sister's on their own. They don't have a social network anymore because, and a lot of times new Muslims, they realize okay, this social network I'm at, I need to cut it because it's drawing me, back to whatever lifestyle I went. And it's hard. It's hard because everybody likes to have friends. Everybody likes to go out and do things with their friends. To become suddenly isolated because you're trying to do the right thing is very difficult. And then there's the kind of making Islam your identity, and along with that, the name change dilemma. Do I call myself Muhammad now, or can I still be Jason? My opinion, if anybody cares to hear it, I came from the early generation where everybody changed their name. Nowadays, people don't do that nearly as much, and I would recommend, unless a person is intent on it, to not encourage them. Because frankly, Islam needs to mature in the West, and you need to get used to meeting Mike the Muslim, Bob the Muslim, Jennifer the Muslim. You need to get, these names are permissible. There's nothing wrong with these names, and Islam is here in the West, inshallah, to stay forever. So you need to be used to hearing names that are not Abdullah, Abdurrahman, subhanAllah. We have enough of them, alhamdulillah. So that would be something. Don't push that on people, but sometimes people insist because they really, new name, new me, new identity. It's something that helps the change the external so the internal can change. And so that's something, like I said, it's a case-by-case thing. But, you know, at the same time, keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with, you know, Western names. And then there's, you know, the probably one of the biggest challenges. What if I have a boyfriend? What if I have a girlfriend? And they're going to come to you and they're going to ask you, is this okay? Do Muslims have girlfriends? Do Muslims have boyfriends? Brother, you have to be careful in how you answer that. People like to give the quick answer. It's haram. You can't do this. Maybe they live together. Maybe they've been together for 5 years. Maybe they've talked about getting married. And you're going to tell them it's haram. Move out tomorrow, brother. You're going to go to hell if you die like this. You have to be reasonable and realistic with these people. They're in situations, maybe the brother can't afford to live on his own. The sister can't afford to move out. She has nowhere else to go. He has no place. He's going to move back home with his parents. It doesn't work like that. So you have to be reasonable and cautious in how you advise people on these life-changing decisions. So that's something. And the next one, marriage. A lot of new Muslims, they get this idea, man, I need to get married. My personal advice is, unless this boyfriend-girlfriend thing cannot be avoided, and maybe the boyfriend-girlfriend wants to accept Islam too, okay, let them get married, fine, move ahead with it. But otherwise, let the person come to understand who they are turning into. You can't jump into a marriage, especially with the cultural ramifications of it. A lot of times converts marry people from, you know, maybe their first generation Americans here. There's still all that cultural baggage that he has no idea, she has no idea what to expect, especially for the girl. You know, you guys understand. Sometimes it's expected in certain cultures that the daughter, the new daughter-in-law, is a de facto servant of the in-laws. A woman from the West does not understand this, and frankly, it's not even part of Islam for that type of relationship to exist between the in-laws and the daughter-in-law. So suddenly she's in this situation now, and she's like, man, what the heck's wrong with these people? Their dean says this and they treat me like that. What's going on? I don't want any part of it, I'm out. And you push this poor woman away, this poor brother away, because you put them in this situation. Yeah, brother, get married. Let them take it easy. Let them find out who they are and what their place is in the deen before you start to encourage this. So this is another thing. This comes along, you know, in this. And then it comes to knowledge. A hard point. This is a personal experience. The brothers that I met in the masjid that day and who taught me for the first 2-3 years of my Islam, they didn't know everything. And they did the best they could. MashaAllah, righteous brothers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them and their families. I never saw them miss any sunnah prayers. I never saw them not doing optional fasting. Not fasting as best they could during Ramadan. MashaAllah, righteous brothers. But the things I learned from them were not 100% correct in some cases. They did the best they could. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them from that. But it was very, very difficult when the truth when the strongest opinion came to me to leave what I learned, because these people are de facto playing the role of the Prophet ﷺ to you. They are teaching you the deen. And subhanAllah, imagine now, you feel like you're turning your back on that person because you're leaving what they taught you. So when these people come to the masjid, and subhanAllah, a story. Here's is an amazing story of conversion. This is a brother from the UK. He's in Hyde Park. In Hyde Park, they go and they use drugs. He's smoking marijuana with a guy in the park. The thing that starts the conversation, he rolls his differently than he rolls mine. Or, you get what I'm saying. He rolls his papers differently. Where are you from, brother? You roll your papers differently. Oh, I'm from Morocco. Oh, that's cool. Let's smoke together and talk. That's how he found out about Islam. Imagine. And the brother was telling his story and people criticized that guy. Astaghfirullah, how could... And the brother got upset. He said, how can you criticize that person who brought me to Islam, and on the day of judgment we'll find a carbon copy of everything I do in his deeds. So you never know how a person came to Islam, but that guy is definitely not the one you want to learn your religion from, right? The guy in the park using drugs. So it's a delicate situation, but you've seen it. A guy comes to the masjid through a Muslim who you haven't seen in months, years. Maybe he's a guy that only comes once in Ramadan and that's it. So helping that person to understand in the most gentle way possible, because it really is a delicate situation, because you want to bring them both, honestly, to the masjid. But the person that they learned Islam from is not their best teacher in all cases. So that's something that you have to deal with. And for new Muslims coming to the masjid, everyone is a scholar. Every single one of the people they run into has to be a scholar. They were born Muslim. They've been practicing Islam their whole lives. They've studied the deen. We all know what's the reality. We're all laymen. We're all casual practitioners, you could say. So helping them realize, don't ask every single guy for the right way to do something. That's where this group of Muslims can help them. Because they know now, oh, okay, I know that, these 3-4 guys are the guys I'm going to go to when I have questions. Not just the guy I prayed next to at Isha, and maybe that's the first time he's been to the masjid in a long time himself. And he's going to get the wrong answer, the wrong ideas. And so that's another thing you have to help new people with. And another thing that myself associated with that is suddenly finding yourself, when you approach the deen from an academic perspective, you sit down, you're reading books, you're studying the deen, eventually you will surpass a lot of born Muslims in what they know. And it's an awkward situation for you, because they're like, oh, you've been Muslim for a few years, brother, how are you telling me now? But it happens. And so helping people to understand that, subhanAllah, don't be insecure in your knowledge, don't be ashamed of your knowledge, but understand that people can sometimes get a little bit testy when the new guy, it's like it's your job. The new guy comes in day one, he's telling you, there's a better way to do that. You're like, what are you talking about, rookie? You're day one, what do you know? So this is another thing that, Muslims, can deal with. If anybody has any questions, you want to interrupt, we can make it a conversation. I feel like, maybe I'm losing somebody. Yeah.
You mentioned when you said Islam that at that time you realize, your friends, how they're going to react.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, when you accept Islam, because you were not Muslim, you become a Muslim, and then your friends, who's your friend, they're going to make fun of it. Even in being Muslims, when, just take an example, if your sister start wearing hijab, at that point you will know your friends, who's your friends. Your own family member will start mocking at you, oh look what she's doing. I'm talking about just being Muslim.
Yeah.
So imagine when you were doing it as a convert, it gets more difficult. But when we are Muslim, you're doing it, or if sister wears hijab, their American friends, some will just back off. They will just back off because
Yeah, it's difficult. As I was saying, that social circle, it can vanish for some people. It just vanishes. And suddenly they're very isolated and very alone. And so it's something that, like I said, you have to be aware of with new Muslims. Like I said, it's not just, hey brother, come to the masjid on Friday or whatever. No, don't be afraid to invite these people in. A lot of times, people have never, in my case, I never experienced hospitality like that. I remember the first time I ate Pakistani food. Man, my mouth was on fire. And it's one of the best memories I have. The family couldn't believe it. They're like, we made it so mild for you. And I'm like, give me something, I'm dying. They're giving me bread, here's yogurt, here's this. And they couldn't, they're trying not to laugh because to them, they're like, what are you talking about? This is like baby food and you're dying over here. And it was like, so these are the things that really, and it builds a bond. You know, when I go back home, I make it a point to look for those brothers that, mashallah, the brother's still alive. I remember him taking to my house. I mean, subhanAllah, imagine that you're the first person to introduce someone to an entirely new cuisine, an entirely new, hospitality. So don't be afraid to do that. Take that reward. That's something that'll be with you, So if any, like I said, go ahead, brother.
Well, you mentioned how you were searching to find the truth. What is your advice to those who are following that path currently, searching to find the truth? What's your advice to them? How do they navigate their way through that process?
What I've come to realize is that sincerity will lead you to the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not leave a person seeking guidance in misguidance. Just the same way, a person avoiding the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will leave them lost. It's what they desire in their heart, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them what they want. And so a person, if they are sincere, they're going to find the truth. And the brother told me, one of these brothers, I asked him, I said, isn't that strange that, I came looking for something else and then I found Islam? And he said, brother, you don't need to smell garbage to know that a rose smells beautiful. You don't need to look through all of that other stuff. But at the same time, this is where you yourself as a Muslim, me myself as a Muslim, needs to be able to answer comparative religion questions. You have to have a basic understanding, especially of Christianity. Because this person's going to come and you can point out a very good question. You can ask someone that I have shocked people and I enjoy watching their faces. Did Jesus get a haircut? I guarantee you, most people have never thought of that in their life. Yeah, I think he got a haircut. Okay, what was on the ground after the haircut? Was it God on the ground? These pieces of hair, if he's God in the flesh? You ask them simple things like that. Provoke their mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us so many examples in the Quran of how to approach people, how to provoke people with rhetorical questions and things like that. So ask things like that, and it's a very polite thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and they both ate food. What happens when you eat food, brother? The inevitable trip. This is a very polite way to spark the mind. And this applies to all of these other religions, because they all have these these odd concepts of God. God is a man, but God is in the heavens, and He's a spirit at the same. So you have to be you yourself aware of the answers and aware of these kind of thought-provoking questions. So when a person comes to you and they really don't know, sometimes you really meet people and they're just lost and they're just looking for any answer.
To those people that are lost,
Those people
that are seeking the truth, that are searching for the truth.
Give them the Quran. Give them the Quran. I've had so many people. One brother told me the first time I read the Quran, he said, I wanted to eat it. I wanted to take the pages and eat them. I loved it so much. Another brother told me, he said he read Surah Al-Baqarah. This is the book wherein there is no doubt. That verse sparked him. What are you talking? Who says there's a book and there's no doubt in the contents of it? He felt challenged. So now he's going to read more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created us and He knows the way to speak to us. My opinion is you give a person the Quran and you try your best to answer their questions. And the way you do that is to be familiar with the Quran yourself. to be familiar with the deen yourself, because people will come to you. It's not like people are lost in new ways. The Quraysh weren't lost in a way that's different than nowadays. The people are lost in the same ways. The human, from Adam until us, we're exactly the same. The human being hasn't changed. Our world has changed. Our circumstances have changed. But that fitrah is the exact same fitrah. And so the desire to be on the truth is the same. So answer their questions as best you can. Because people like me, they come from different backgrounds, different points of views. It's a hard question to answer like a one generic kind of fit all for someone who's lost, because everyone's lost in a different way. Some person, he comes because of some horrible trauma that happened in his life. Another person came because maybe something amazing happened to him and he feels that this is God blessing him in his life. It's not that people come from the West with no concepts of God or no concept of being blessed by God or things like that, or punishment, or no concepts of the hereafter. So just be ready to answer them, and be ready to go and help them find someone who can answer better than you if you're in that situation. That's my advice. Because like I said, you can have all the irrefutable perfect answers, and it's not the one that he was looking for. You can have all the pamphlets, but it's not the answer that they were looking for. So you might not be the one to answer, but you can bring them to the masjid. You can give them something to help them on their way. And like I said, sincerity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't leave a sincere seeker of truth abandoned. I'm a kid from Wisconsin, in the middle of the Midwest. No concept of what Islam is. No Muslims in my family, no Muslims in my neighborhood. But yet, I was guided. You know, subhanAllah, it happens. So if a person is seeking guidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them through strange and unusual ways sometimes. You know, street gangs and Saddam Hussein. So, as far as to the learning of knowledge, people always wonder, and this is something that all Muslims, actually we were talking last week, people learn the deen. For example, the Prophet ﷺ kissed his wife before he went to the masjid. Let's take from that, it's permissible to kiss your wife. Okay, next hadith. We've lost so much of the depth and the soul of the deen because sometimes we approach it from a purely fiqh point of view. This is permissible, this is not. The heart and soul is gone. The Prophet ﷺ loved his wife. He was affectionate to his wife. He was intimate with his wife. The Prophet ﷺ and Aisha narrated that the Prophet ﷺ used to, when they would make ghusl together, he would scoop the water up and tease her. I'm going to use it all before you get a chance to. SubhanAllah, we look at that as, it's permissible, to make ghusl with your wife. And you lose everything from it. So, new Muslims, oftentimes, they get that. And just Muslims in general, we get that, okay, here's a book on how to pray. Here's a book on how to fast. There's nothing. My opinion, for a person to really get a well-rounded understanding of the deen, you have to really understand the seerah. And you have to understand the names and attributes of Allah. If you don't know who Allah is, and you don't know who His Messenger is, your religion can become a list of do's and don'ts very quickly. It can just become that. We pray at this time, we don't pray at that time. We eat at this time, we don't eat at that time. We don't do this, we don't. There's no soul behind it. And the attachment, as another hadith of Aisha, I'm summarizing here, so don't quote me and don't hold me to this. She said that in the early stages of Islam, the do's and don'ts, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't reveal the do's and don'ts, but He attached the hearts of people to the hereafter. And after their hearts were attached to the hereafter, then the halal and the haram came down. So you can't overload a person with do this, don't do that, do this. I'll tell you one of the most dangerous things. A brother partly left Islam because he was a DJ. You guys know he DJs, he played music for parties and in nightclubs and stuff like that. Oh, brother, another step. Everybody's in your business as a new Muslim. In your personal life, for some reason, they feel entitled to ask you very personal questions. Oh, I'm a DJ. Brother, you need to find a new job. Okay. He quit his job. Lost his income. put himself in a jam. And then he said, man, I don't have any choice. I have to go back to this haram job. And that made him feel like he couldn't come to the masjid. I'm playing in nightclubs. People are drinking. People are doing this. What are you talking about, brother? The guy just became Muslim a few weeks ago and you're telling him to quit his job? Iman hasn't entered his heart fully. And you're telling him you have to quit, find a new job. So he did. And that really put him in a bad situation. And it was one of the things. We went and found him sometime later. And this was one of the things he told us. He said, man, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to earn a living? You guys are telling me I can't do this, I can't do that. And well, you have to be reasonable. You have to be understanding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't reveal the whole Quran in one day on the companions. The Prophet ﷺ didn't advise them of every do and every don't on one day. It took years, and it takes years. It literally takes years. You're coming from a person, imagine in our own community, the struggles we have with youth. They don't practice. They don't pray. Man, my kids don't want to come to the masjid. And this is with you talking to them about the deen. What about a person 20 years old, 30 years old? What does he know about anything? He's been lost. He's gone through a horrible situation one after the next. And you're telling him, man, you need to stick to this deen like glue. Bite onto it with your molar teeth, brother. Come on, man. We can't even, we struggle to keep our own children raised in our own homes on the deen. So be patient with them and, go gently. So don't overburden them. And then there comes to the family issues. Sometimes people's families turn their back on them, 100%. You've joined ISIS. Congratulations, out of your home. We don't want you here anymore. When you leave that devil-worshipping religion, come back to us. It's very common. A lot of people I know have experienced this. Even Muslims who start to practice. How many people who know a brother or sister who started to practice and, man, sister, why'd you take off your hijab? Oh man, my family's giving me a big deal about it. It's tough. They told me, I'm going to get in trouble at school. This is going to happen. People are going to say this. It happens in our own community. Let alone imagine the family isn't Muslim. So this is another thing, like I said, that social network, that social circle. You have to be ready to help people through difficult things like this. And a lot of time, new Muslims, they're unable to even answer the questions their parents have, their family has. Why did you become Muslim? What do you believe in now? I remember I showed my mother. She said, so what do you believe now? And I showed her the Shahada. She said, there is no God. That's as far as she got. You don't believe in God now? Like, what are you talking about? They don't, a lot of times, know anything besides what they see on TV. They're watching television, they're watching the news. This is all they know. This was how I knew about Islam. Television. That's it. It's not like I had any example. Like I said, I came from the Midwest. There was hardly any Muslims even there. When I went to find Muslims, there was hardly any Muslims. So, it can be difficult. So help them through these family issues. And that leads to another big issue, is holidays. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
So, question, your background, you touched on it a little bit, you didn't go into detail. Was there anything, like in your background, like where your parents were from, that translated into Islam? You know how like some people be like, I'm from the South, so we were very hospitable already.
Oh, man. Not really. Like I said, I had a mother who we were Christian in the most liberal sense, and my father didn't want anything to do with anybody's religion. And, standard American culture. I was just, middle-class kid, nothing, white bread, man. Like, it was plain. There wasn't really anything that led me one way or another towards Islam. Like I said, I was looking for Buddhism first, so.
I had a question what led you to thinking about to start to read about other
So he's asking what led me to start looking into other religions and things. And like I said, it was just questions like, what's my purpose in life? Was it just to keep going the way I was going? You know, just hanging out, doing this, doing that, you know, get a job, go to work, you know, just, is that it? Is that all life has to offer? Is there any enjoyment in life? You know, is everything good? And I had an attachment, I guess, to my fitra that was maybe a little bit more than people my age. So that was it, just the regular questions. So go ahead.
Jazakallah khair, first of all. Beautiful story, alhamdulillah. A lot of things that we can benefit as well. What about your family? I don't know if you touched upon it. I don't know if it's too personal, but now your family today, parents, brothers, sisters, cousins. If you went back to medicine, how is that like now? And I do agree 100% with the Pakistani thing. Way too slow.
So the brother's asking, like, what's it like nowadays going back home and dealing with family nowadays? Nowadays, it is what it is. They've accepted it. This is who I am. They don't, like, I pray with my, you know, when I visit my relatives and things like that, hey, excuse me, can I go, do you have a bedroom I can use or something like that? You know, I don't make it a big deal. My in-laws, on the other hand, you know, that's a little bit more tricky situation because of the in-law factor and very staunch, I guess, Americans. To a lot of people in the West, Christianity, America, and in particular being Republican, it's one thing. It's all one thing. It all twists and turns and is tied up together. So when you say you're not Christian, it's kind of, you've reduced your Americanism. You know, then you have, you know, the Trump factor. You know, you guys all know the Trump factor nowadays. And so that plays a role in that situation. So that's a little bit trickier. But at the same time, they accept it. They don't, this many years foregone, they don't have a choice. At the beginning, the worst it got for me, you know, sometimes people, they praise you, oh brother, you've been through so much, you know, you're like the companions. We're nothing like the companions. We're nothing. No one tried to kill me. I wasn't boycotted and starved and stuck on the outside of Madison for years. The worst it got for me, I went away for the weekend. When I came home, I had a few posters of some masajid, and I had a small, like, first, you know, library, you know, Quran and a few books, you know, it was like this big on the shelf. All that was thrown in the trash. I had to go fish it out of the trash. That's the worst it got for me. Other people, like I was telling you, their families turned their back on them. Period. You are not part of this family as long as you believe in that religion. Goodbye. And they cut them off. So, you know, everybody's role is, or everybody's experience is different from the next. You know, alhamdulillah, I had it pretty easy. You know, my parents thought it was like a fad. They kind of backed off. They're like, oh, he's just, you know, it's better this than him into drugs, right? So, yes, brother, go ahead.
You say that in the Prophet every salah go before in the white forehead in the kiss and go pray salah in the sunnah.
I didn't understand your question.
Prophet home to go mosque pray and before in the Prophet wife in the forehead and kiss and go salah in the sunnah.
Yes, he did this. Oh, is it the sunnah? In the general sense, yes, you could say because he did it, it is the sunnah.
Now the sunnah gone.
Why is the sunnah gone now? Brothers, you have some explaining to do.
I just hear somebody laughing. Oh, this old man kiss wife.
You revive that sunnah, Brother Muhammad.
MashaAllah. We'll follow your lead, inshallah. Okay, go ahead, young man. Yeah, we can just open it. I had a few more points. You know, I didn't want to, I'll come back to your question in just 1 second. I feel like maybe I gave a lot of negative points of when you enter the masjid in the community. I'll give you some of the most amazing points. InshaAllah, in a couple weeks, alhamdulillah, I'm going to go with Umrah with you guys here in Stockton. And I am so deeply looking forward to meeting back up with my Muslim parents. An older uncle and auntie who took care of us in the most amazing way. They became our parents. They were older than us, and they really looked after us as if we were their children. They had children, they have, mashallah, amazing kids, and they treated us as, they were there for us in every way they could be. And so these are the things that I would suggest that, subhanAllah, there's nothing stopping you from becoming that person, becoming that rock and that foundation for someone that's new to the community to lean on. I can't wait to see these people. This is one of the most beautiful things, is to experience that kindness and compassion from people you didn't know and only wanted the best for you, even though you were a stranger to them initially.
Who's that? They live out there?
Yeah, they live in Jeddah. Yeah, so inshallah.
So
No, he lives there now. He lives there now.
they're like Americans or?
No, they're Tunisian, yeah, but they live in Saudi now. And again, that group that welcomed me, that unfortunately you don't see as often as it should be, as a peer into the masjid, not as the new shiny thing to give hugs to and, hey brother, nice to see you. And we don't even exchange phone numbers. They don't care. They don't engage you. They don't have any interest in you. They pat on the back, whatever. But I was engaged as a peer and brought into the masjid and encouraged to take part in the masjid. One of the best things that happened to me is because I was one of the few Americans. There was actually like 3 of us who came at the same time into the masjid, 4 of us. Is they said, we get emails from, I don't even know if it was emails. We get letters from schools saying they want to bring their kids on field trips to see a mosque. How about you do a presentation on Islam for them? One of the best things that ever happened to me, because it forced me to learn the deen in a way that I could teach it to someone else. And a lot of people never learn it that way. The best way to learn your religion is to have someone start asking you questions. And you have to answer. Students, man, kids are inquisitive. They'll ask you great questions. Prepare something that you have to show them and present Islam in the best way you can. So this was one of the things, like I said, I was brought in and encouraged to do that. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
What was your family's reaction when you accepted Islam?
Oh, it was pretty intense at first. It was pretty intense. So here I'll give you the background of from what I understand is the reason why my father looked at religion so bad. He was in the military and he decided he wanted to go to a Bible study. So he wasn't really a Christian per se, but that's like a lot of people, that's what we are. Let me go and find out about it. So he goes and he asked the priest some questions. You could say they were controversial questions. Again, it doesn't take much to have something be kind of controversial in Christianity, because there's some things that it's for them very difficult to answer. So he asked some of these tough questions in a group. The session ended. They joined hands. They all stood together and prayed. My father, not being part of the group, sitting outside with some other people sitting, in the chairs. My father's name was Dwayne. Let us all pray that Dwayne goes to hell for the questions he's asked us tonight. This is his experience with religion. So imagine he grows up. This happened to him when he was like 18, 19 years old. So he grows up with this concept. Religion, it's a tool to manipulate and a tool to control people. Why would you waste your time with this? I remember his exact words. Where did you get this stuff from? I know you didn't get it from me. So it was very confusing for my father. He's just, this doesn't make sense. We're not a religious family. Why are you interested in all this stuff? So this is kind of the view. My mom, she was more scared. I had to call my uncle, the priest, talk to him. He was going to talk some sense into me. I was very close to being sent to live with him for the summer, because he had to get me out of this cult I was joining. And that's what they kind of saw it as a cult. But like I said, because of my age, it helped, I think, in their just not being too pushy with it. Because I was at that age, teenage years, the harder you push one way, the harder I'm going in the other way. And so they kind of left it at that. And so they thought, I'll give it a couple weeks, he'll be, back to whatever. So this was my experience. It was pretty easy. Go ahead, brother.
How has Islam impacted you? How has Islam impacted you when you face trials and tribulations? And how does this compare to before you accepted Islam?
Now, alhamdulillah, you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rely on, and you have guidance, proper, clear guidance on how to approach trials and tribulations with patience and a correct form of patience. This is the blessings of Islam. SubhanAllah, they're too many to enumerate, right? The blessings, if you wanted to, you couldn't. So, facing trials and things now, you have a clear path on how to do it. It's like walking into a room. If the lights are on, you have no problems navigating it. You may find something on the floor you need to step over, you need to step around, something you have to climb over, and it's hard. It's not always easy. It's not like converts or something have some kind of enlightened state that other Muslims don't have. You and I are the same. We struggle in the same ways, Faith increases and faith decreases. And so we all do our best to stay, firm to that faith and adhere to it as best as we can. Anyone else? Yeah, any sisters? Sorry, I'm kind of over here. Or I don't have if anybody wants to write a question or anything, that's basically all I brought to talk about. I know it's kind of long-winded. It's been like an hour. But that's kind of my experience in a nutshell, and my advice, is don't be afraid to be that person, and don't be afraid to teach. I mean, imagine if you taught someone, just Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Especially at the beginning, man, that's all they're going to pray with. Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Qul Huwallahu, every prayer, every rak'ah. And that's all carbon copied onto you. And now imagine you teach them something profound, something deep, something that changes their life. Don't be afraid to go out and seek that reward. Even if it is for a selfish reason, as seeking that reward for yourself. SubhanAllah, be there for those new people. And, and SubhanAllah, I guess another point that I would come to is especially for the sisters. They deal with an extra level. You say, brother, you have to grow your beard. No big deal, man. No big deal. It's not a big deal, especially nowadays. That's the style, right? But sisters have to, be patient and encouraging, and they know better than any of us know. And I honestly don't think a man can even wrap their mind around what it's like to wear hijab. You can wear a thobe, you can have your beard down to the floor. It's not the same thing. And so, especially when it comes to that for the sisters, they have to be there in support for that sister. And really, the types of questions my wife got and things like that were unbelievable. It's... Go ahead. Oh, sorry, that was... Yeah. They were unbelievable, Oh, you have to walk behind him now? You have to do... Because you put that on your head, you have to be behind him everywhere you go. And, just wild stuff people say. And, one of the things that amazes me, if you're with your wife, she has niqab or something like that, people talk to you and ask you about her, and she's standing right next to you. I remember back home, it's in the winter, we're at the cash register, it's a woman cashier. Oh, she sees my wife in the niqab. Oh, that's probably pretty good for the winter. It probably keeps her face warm. As if she's like not alive or not even next to us or something. And I said, I don't know, you have to ask her. I don't wear it, So this is they deal with this, subhanAllah, like a dehumanization almost sometimes. And so, for the community, they have to be, the sisters have to be there. And they know this better than, I'm not telling them anything they don't know, I guess. And on that note, I would like to thank Mani for helping me get here tonight. and helping me for 27 years to stay on my deen and giving me a beautiful home and beautiful children to come to home to. So thank you for that, Mani. So, that's it, guys. You know, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Anybody else have any other questions?
And nobody like me, and I have no money. I go pay the Moharana. Moharana is married. Prophet Sallallahu you 7 times don't sleep, and your Moharana done, your wife is halal. Is right?
You don't have money for mother. The situation where somebody,
Prophet Sallallahu
wants to get married
7
but
times
doesn't
don't
have the money
sleep,
for mother.
your wife is halal. No pay the Moharana.
You trying to get married again, Brother Muhammad? Yeah, teaching Quran, is that the question? Teaching Quran for Mahr?
No, the 7 times don't sleep, citation the don't sleep, and your wife is halal. No pay the Moharana.
Mahar, mahar. So if you now you decide the Quran and then
No Quran, no Quran, don't sleep.
What is that?
Don't sleep.
So deciding the Quran is saying after reciting the surah for 7 times, you don't have to pay mahar and your wife is halal for you. Is that sunnah? Yes.
Maybe Khalil will give you the details, inshallah.
Don't sleep. 7 times.
You need to learn more terminology of Pakistani.
Yeah, inshallah.
The brother said that we had the first time in Pakistani food. Brother, I'll tell you what, the first time when you give experience that you were sweating in this masjid, that I cooked the food, chef overhead, they were like sweating. Brother, this is too spicy. Now when they have Mediterranean food, they say, brother, this is too blended.
Yeah.
But they're used to of eating spicy
Yeah,
food.
count me in that camp also. If it's not spicy, it's not for me.
They say, well, this is too blended. They should have some kind of kick in it.
Yeah.
Brother Omar.
If we think samosas can bring more conversation up.
I definitely would agree with that position. I would agree with that 100%.
One quick question. What has the da'wah been like to friends and family, back home? Has there been room and,
Yeah,
have
you
they
slide
seen
it
that
in
change?
where you can. One of the best things that honestly I would say, and I saw, everybody knows who Khabib is, the champion, UFC fighter Khabib. He had a really good post. He said, non-Muslims, they don't read the Quran, they don't read hadith, they read you. So be a good ambassador. And this for me, like, I really feel like, especially with your family, because, if your situation is like mine, where your in-laws are kind of like standoffish when it comes, like, we can't talk about religion and stuff like that. So the best thing you could do is just be nice, to go out, exemplify the character of the Prophet ﷺ in your own life. And that's it. That's the best, honestly, in any circumstance, at work, at school, wherever you are. Because this speaks louder than anything. You can give lip service to the deen all day and people see you carrying on like, man, like, they don't have any problem with looking at you, man, that guy's a hypocrite. They'll label you a hypocrite in their mind very quickly. Like, he says this, but he does that.
We have one question over here from the sister side.
Bring that together, they see one way of life and then you're trying to show them.
So just the question, the balance between culture and background and family and your new found deen and way of life.
And raising children in that. So, well, you can ask them, they're sitting over there. But initially, I'll be very frank with you. We were quite scared to allow our children to interact with our family when we weren't around. We were quite scared because it was very tense. And even still, subhanAllah, even still, and this isn't another ding against the mother-in-law, but it comes. One of my children, the last time our mother-in-law was there, the last thing she says as she's leaving to the airport, she looks at her hijab. You know, you don't have to wear that. That's what Catholics do. Okay, bye. Like, it still comes. And it's just, you just have to shake it off. Leave it at that. You can't let things like that, you know, affect your relationship, because it's almost, in a way, I feel like that's what they want. It's like they try to provoke you sometimes or something like that. But at the beginning, we were very scared and very hesitant, and it put a bit of a wedge in between us and our family. And looking back on it now, I would have done things differently with regard to that. But it is what it is. Like, a lot of people experience this kind of thinking. They say, man, if I let my kids go with the non-Muslim relatives, they're going to be confused. I don't get the feeling at any point my children were confused in their identity, that we're Muslim and they're not, and it's okay. To us, it was a bigger deal than I think it was to them. That's how I feel. Maybe they have a different view of it, but I really felt like the fear and the anxiety and the hesitation was from us. And the kids were completely comfortable. They know who they are. They knew who they were then, even at a young age. And it really wasn't a problem. But that being said, some people's in-laws, you know, some people's family, they don't let up. They don't let up, and they're unable to have that kind of relationship with their grandchildren or relatives and things like that. So each case is different, you know, and you just kind of navigate that, you know, as you go. You know, you do your best to explain to people, like, look, you know, and it always comes up. This is maybe my last point. The holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of this. For some families, it's a devout religious celebration, and it makes it very difficult for, you know, you as their child or something to go and participate in it. And other people, it's just a time we get together and we shop till we drop, and that's all it means to us. And so it's less difficult for them. Other people, it's a family gathering. And when you don't go to these things, you're driving a wedge in between yourself and your family. And, you know, the scholars have kind of answered this in the way that it's case-by-case basis, but participate as little as you can to maintain your family ties, basically. Go and keep those bonds together, and don't isolate yourself from your family in a way that's going to make them reject you, reject the deen altogether. What kind of religion separates people from their family? This is what the Quraysh used to say to the Sahaba. They used to attack them for this. You know, you come with this new religion that divides a household. So don't put yourself in that position. And do your best to just, you know, like I said, just be a good example, be tolerant, be reassuring to them that you're not part of ISIS, you're not going to do anything, you know, extreme, that's probably your religion teaches you all the goodness and all the best characteristics that they aspire to see you have. That's one of the things that is really is just talk to them. The characteristics that the Prophet ﷺ has called us to, and the moral standard supersedes anything else that they have. So when you explain that to them and tell them, this is what I'm attaining to be, this is kind of your best kind of bridge, you know, to working with them. And that leads me to my last kind of point, is Eid. For converts, do your best, guys, ladies. Take one of these new people with you to your family. Alhamdulillah, when we moved out here, where we were back home, we didn't have any issue. Eid was great. We were all together in the masjid. We went to houses. When we came out here, it was very harsh and very difficult initially. But alhamdulillah, we have a very, very good family that has invited us to their home for every single Eid almost since we've been out here, and brought us in like we're their relatives. We attend Eid with them, with all of their relatives. Do the same with these new people. Eid can be extraordinarily lonely for converts. You don't have your family, you don't have your friends. What do you have, man? You come to the masjid, you're here 45 minutes, and then poof, everybody disappears. Bring these people, let them see and experience Eid how your culture does it. I learned what Eid is. You know, people, they give money to the kids. The kids came out. The first time I saw this, I was like, what's going on? Convoy of kids come, and they walk in, and they're all hands out, $5, $10 bill. Dude, these kids leave with more money than I had in my pocket. I said, man, this is awesome. This is great. Like, this is amazing. Like, let people see that and appreciate that and take part in that, especially on Eid. Especially on Eid. Yeah.
So my second question was, what advice would you give to someone who is like living at home and with their family who wants to practice and like stay grounded in their religion, but not that their family isn't completely against them, but they're not 100% with them in everything, and it makes it feel like sometimes that's even harder because like
Yeah.
you have this 1 foot in with your family and 1 foot out, so you don't, that person doesn't know where to stand, and they're trying, to stay, grounded, but their family might be pulling them back when it's really hard for them. So maybe just some insight or advice on your part.
There was a younger brother back home who was in a situation like that, and I remember him telling us, he said, my family is so against me practicing the deen that I have to pray in my closet in my bedroom. And so I look at that now, years later, and I think, what's wrong with that? If that's what it takes to bring you and keep you close with your family, then you have to do it. You don't have to put your deen in someone's face, right? You can practice your religion without putting it down their throat. If, for example, SubhanAllah, it's amazing, you would find people discouraging a person from praying. Fine, pray in your bedroom, close the door. I'm gonna go in my room now. I'll see you in a little bit. Pray in your room. But you don't have to necessarily shove it down their throat that you're practicing, because in some ways it could be very painful for them because you're reminding them of their shortcomings. And so, practice in the least, at least kind of in your face way, if that's what it takes. There's nothing wrong with that. How many of the companions hid their Islam for years? Until subhanAllah, the conquest of Mecca, the Quraysh didn't know that there was Muslims still in Mecca. And so there's nothing wrong with that, and doing your best. For example, I remember a sister kind of in a similar situation. She would go to the no hijab, no jilbab, nothing. It was in her bag. She goes to the car in the garage. Okay, I'm leaving now. Puts it all on real quick, leaves really quickly. When she gets home, pulls in the garage, close the door, take it all off. You don't have to tell them, when I went out, I put the hijab on and I don't care what you think. You just don't have to say anything. You come, you go, you had the hijab on, they don't know any different. They're not asking, you're not lying, the relationship is nice. And you just work with them, you work at it slowly. That's the things, people don't change overnight, circumstances don't change overnight. So you have to, patience is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human being the nature of human beings is hasty. We're in a hurry to get things and get to where we want to be and do things. And that's part of subhanAllah, this test of this life, this patience. Be, slow down, think about what you're doing, and think about the most beautiful way of kind of progressing with your family. It's something that I struggle with my immediate family, with my extended family, and it's just time and patience and just wisdom, and that's what I could suggest.
Another quick question: what type of books and classes have you found to be, in the 27 years, most beneficial that you can share with the brothers?
My suggestion is, for any Western Muslim, you need to attach yourself to Sheikh Jamal. He has written as a very knowledgeable person and a convert himself. This is something a lot of people, subhanAllah, I find amazing. They don't know Sheikh Jamal Zarabozo is a convert himself. So his writing comes from that background. He writes, for me personally, in a way that's very detailed, very easy to understand, and yet very approachable, and it's written in the Western style. This is unfortunately the problem with translation, is things are translated in English from Eastern style of thinking into Western words, and it doesn't always jive, because you have a background here that you kind of approach things slightly different, and he writes in that way, and the depth in which he writes. His book, his commentary on the 40 Hadith is a must-have. If you don't have that book in your library, you're slipping. How to approach and understand the Quran, another small book, excellent. The authority and the importance of the Sunnah, another excellent book. These are kind of like primer books to get your mind ready for more in-depth topics. Another one of my favorite speakers nowadays, and I know he has his controversy that swirls around him, but Yasser Qadi. His academic style is very unique in the English language. His seerah on YouTube, completely free, the most detailed and accurate and in-depth seerah you will find in the English language, period. You should, if you have like any, convert friends, any people who are English speaking only, you have to turn them on to that. It's the best. There's Yasser Verjas. There's so many nowadays, but at the same time, as I said, you have to familiarize yourself with the good and the bad of these speakers. Here in the West, the Wild West, man, you can... Average people, like myself, get opportunities to be in front of an audience. And man, you know how it goes. Wild stuff comes out sometimes. People have agendas, people have motives, people have, they're trying to give you this American version of Islam that's just this kind of watered down thing that, man, you don't even know what it is anymore and stuff. So you have to be cautious when or recommending people. I would say the masjids like this one, bring them, let them be exposed. Mashallah, you guys have guest speakers, you have your imam, you have, Sheikh Yusuf, Sheikh Khalil, Fahmi, you have, all these people here locally that you can ask questions to, and they can help you. Like I said, not everyone in the masjid is a scholar. Is there any scholars here tonight, students of knowledge? Anyone have ijazah in anything? No. We all do our best, and if we don't know, you ask those who do know. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do. Ask those, if you don't know, ask those who do know. And so help them, at least be familiar enough to help them. And alhamdulillah, nowadays, man, you have so much on YouTube. I remember the early days, like I said, all these students of knowledge, all these sheikhs we have nowadays, they were in Medina. They weren't here. They were still students themselves, But definitely you have the advantage of having, amazing, people in your community right here. Sheikh Jamal has his classes online. This is something too. Don't be afraid to take online classes. Another person that I would highly recommend that we've had locally, Shadid Muhammad. He's an amazing speaker, and he will speak to you on terms that you can relate to, and I found him extremely profound, extremely eye-opening in the way he communicates and the way he talks to you about, like what I was mentioning earlier, the heart and soul that you don't always find. That heart and soul that you lose in that academic kind of thick explanation of the deen. And so, this is what I would recommend. I could maybe, if anyone has any particular topics or something like that, we can talk personally afterwards. But I'm sorry, I'm keeping you guys a long time.
Yeah.
Not so much a question, I just wanted to touch on a few things you said. Thank you for your story, it was amazing. But you were right, it really resonated with me what you said about it's our job as Muslims. I'm a convert to Islam as well myself, so knowing like the reasons why we do things as opposed to just do or don't, halal, haram. Because not just the Muslims around us, but other people, non-Muslims who are maybe aren't even considering Islam, they'll want to grill you on like, well, what are you doing? Or you just rules. I had some friends of mine, Christian friends, who just said, I mean, they were scared, they were worried. Man, you're just entering this religion of rules and do's and don'ts. So it's so, like you said, it's so important for us to know, like, be educated on why, like, that specialness, the importance, why we take religion, the reason we do it, just the little things, and that's what makes the deen of ours so special. So we know, and it's good for us to just, reiterate just the basics. It's our job to be educated. So, like you said, people will force us for ourselves, inshallah, to learn. Like the other people that we didn't even know, we need to know these answers. So some people are there just, just curious. Like, why do you do it? They're not considering coming. So the person on the street or the person's like, man, why the beer? Why this? So to be able to explain more than just, well, just assume it's haram. Well, we don't smoke because that. So you know what I mean. So that you said a lot of really good things that you were saying. Like, man, I remember. And to this
learning the blessings of why you do something is an amazing. Like for me personally, the blessings of wudu, the blessings of salah, the blessings of fasting. It's you because you're taught. Okay, brother, when dawn happens, you're not eating. Okay, and then when the Maghrib time comes, then you can eat, and you should say this dua, and you should eat 3 dates. And what am I gaining out of this personally? Oh, brother, it's a good way to lose weight. It's mechanical and it's dry.
I just wanted to thank you. This is amazing.
Thank you.
We have a guest with us, Paul. We have Paul here, a guest with us. Did you have any questions about the lecture tonight? Any questions that you had from your research on Islam, from the books that you've read?
I'm just here to listen to it.
Okay, alhamdulillah. If you have any questions you want to speak to,
if you wanted to talk afterwards, it's kind of
Brother Mubashir, any closing remarks?
Praise be to Allah. Excellent. The story is excellent. I just say to anybody that has any questions about anything, they should be referred to people that have the experience and the knowledge to be able to answer their questions. As an African American in America, one wise man said, I'll leave you with this. When you figure out who the scholar was, he said, I'm not an expert in anything, nor am I an educated man, nor am I a divine man, but I believe in divine prophecy. But I am a sincere man, and my sincerity is my credentials.
There you go.
MashaAllah. Jazakumullah khair. We'll close with that. A reminder, there's tea and sweets.
Spicy.
Not spicy.
How about samosa? Any samosa?
بارك الله فيك. جزاك الله خير بدو علي.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
You want that you had earlier?